My sister spent 180,000 on her engagement party, just to prove she was better than me. She stood under a crystal chandelier, looked at my army uniform, and said it in front of everyone. My floral wall cost more than her yearly salary. A few people laughed. My mother didn't say a word, just sipped her champagne, and in that moment, I knew exactly what they thought of me. The poor soldier sister. I should have stayed quiet. I should have let it go. But then the doors slammed open. Not a waiter, not staff, a 4-star general. He didn't even look at my sister. He walked straight toward me, saluted, and placed a black leather folder on the table. Then he said something that made the entire room go silent. I knew what kind of night it was going to be before I even stepped inside. The valet didn't look at me twice, not because he didn't see me, because he didn't know where to place me. That happens when you show up to a 180,000 engagement party in an army uniform. Whitfield Country Club was glowing, crystal chandeliers, marble floors. Soft music floating through the air like it belonged to people who had never worried about anything real. 80 guests, maybe more. Men in tailored suits. Women in dresses that shimmered under the lights. Champagne in every hand, laughter that sounded practiced. Everything about the room said one thing. Money, status, control, and then there was me, army dress greens. Perned. I stepped inside anyway, slow controlled, because I wasn't new to rooms where I didn't belong. The army teaches you that. You walk in, you observe, you don't react. But this wasn't a battlefield. This was family, and that made it harder. A few people noticed me. Not many, just enough. That quick glance. That silent judgment, not loud, but clear. She doesn't fit here. I ignored it, or at least I tried to. My eyes moved across the room until they landed on her. Brooke, my sister, standing in the center like she owned the night. Gold dress. Perfect hair. Glass in her hand. Surrounded by people who looked like they had been waiting their whole lives to be seen standing next to her. She wasn't just hosting a party, she was proving something. And tonight, she wanted everyone to see it. Her eyes found me. Of course they did. For a second she just looked, then she smiled. And I felt it, that familiar shift. Not warmth. Not love, something sharper. You actually came. Her voice wasn't loud, but it carried. A few heads turned. Subtle. Curious. I was invited. I said, simple, controlled. Brooke stepped closer. Her eyes moved over my uniform slowly, taking it in. Judging it. In uniform, she asked. There it was, the first cut, small, clean. I didn't react. I came straight from base. She let out a soft laugh, just enough for the people around her to hear. Oh, she said, that explains it. A couple of quiet smiles around us. Nothing obvious, nothing anyone could call out. But enough. Always enough. She leaned in slightly. Like she was sharing something personal. Something kind. You know, tonight's kind of a big deal, she said. I didn't answer. I didn't need to. She wasn't talking to me. She was performing, for some people. She added, just a little louder. That one landed. I felt it. Not because it hurt. Because it confirmed something I had always known. I wasn't here as her sister. I was here as contrast. Mom's been asking about you, she said casually. I followed her gaze. My mother. Across the room, laughing, holding a champagne glass like it was part of her identity. She hadn't come to me. She hadn't even acknowledged me. Not yet, maybe not at all. She looks busy, I said. Brooke shrugged. She always is when it matters. I let that sit. Then reached for a glass of champagne from a passing tray. Not because I wanted it, because it gave me something to hold, because stillness can feel like weakness in rooms like this. You should try the food, Brooke said. It's all imported. Of course it was. Everything about tonight was designed to say, look how far I've come, and maybe, look how far you haven't. I'm good, I said. She studied me for a second, like she was waiting for something, a reaction, a crack. When she didn't get one, she smiled again, satisfied. Then turned away, just like that, leaving me standing there, in the middle of a room that wasn't built for people like me. I moved toward the edge, near one of the tall windows. Outside it was dark, quiet, real. Inside everything felt staged. I could see my reflection in the glass. Uniform sharp, face calm, exactly how I had been trained to look. Even when everything underneath wasn't. Discipline is kindness. My grandmother's voice, Clear, steady, always at the right time, kindness to your future self. I breathed out slowly, let it settle. Because I knew something was coming. I could feel it, that shift in the air, that quiet tension before something breaks. Behind me, the music softened. Not stopped, just lowered, the kind of change most people wouldn't notice. But I did. I turned. Brooke was moving again, toward the center of the room. Champagne glass raised slightly, smile brighter now. Controlled, intentional. People were already watching. She didn't need to ask for attention. She knew how to take it. She reached the center, picked up a fork, tapped it lightly against her glass. Clink. The sound cut through everything. Then stopped, all eyes on her. 80 people. Waiting, watching, and then, she looked at me. Not quickly, not accidentally. Direct, deliberate, like she had been waiting for this exact moment. And suddenly, I understood, this wasn't just a speech. This was the moment, the one she planned. The one where she would remind everyone, exactly who I was, and exactly who I wasn't. She lifted her glass, took a breath, and began to speak. Brooke didn't rush. She never did. She stood in the center of the room, holding her glass, waiting just long enough for the silence to feel intentional. 80 people, all eyes on her. Exactly how she liked it. "I just want to say thank you," she began. Her voice was soft, controlled. The kind that made people lean in instead of tuning out. "For being here tonight, for celebrating something so important to me." A few smiles. A couple of nods. Safe, predictable. Then she shifted subtle. "But I saw it. This night means everything," she continued, "because it represents how far I've come." There it was. The first real line. Not about love. Not about commitment. About success. Her eyes moved across the room, then stopped on me, and held, long enough for people to notice. "I've worked really hard to build this life," she said, lifting her glass slightly. "And I'm proud of it." Soft applause, a few claps. Encouragement. Then, she smiled. That smile, the one I knew too well, and I think it's important to recognize the difference between people who build something. She paused. Just a second. And people who settle. The room didn't react immediately, but the tension changed. People felt it. They just didn't know what to do with it yet. My grip tightened slightly around the glass in my hand, not enough for anyone to see, just enough to ground myself. Brooke tilted her head, still looking at me. "And sometimes," she continued, "that difference is very obvious." Now people were watching more carefully, not just her, me. Trying to connect the dots. She took a slow sip of champagne, then lowered the glass, and said it. Clear. Loud enough for everyone. My floral wall alone cost more than her yearly army salary. A few people laughed. Not everyone, but enough. Enough to echo. Enough to land. I didn't move, didn't react, didn't give her what she wanted. But inside, I felt it, not embarrassment, not exactly. Something deeper. Something heavier. That quiet, familiar feeling of being measured and found lacking. Brooke didn't stop. Of course she didn't. She leaned slightly toward the crowd, confident now, comfortable, and honestly, she added with a light shrug, "Her job is just pocket change." This time, more people laughed, not cruelly, not loudly, but openly, and that was worse, because it meant they agreed, or at least, they didn't disagree. I kept my face still, eyes forward, breathing steady, exactly how I had been trained. But then, I looked at my mother, Diane. She was standing near the front, champagne in hand, watching, listening, and for a second, I thought, maybe she'd say something. Maybe she'd step in. Maybe. Anything. But she didn't. She took a sip, looked away, and that was it. That was the moment. Not the laughter. Not the words. The silence. That's what stayed. Because strangers can judge you. That doesn't matter. But family. Family chooses whether to stand beside you or step back. And she stepped back. Brooke exhaled lightly. Satisfied. Like she had just proven something. Like the room now understood exactly where everyone stood. She raised her glass again. "To success," she said. "To knowing your worth." People clinked glasses. Smiled, moved on. Just like that. As if nothing had happened. As if I hadn't just been reduced to a comparison. A number. A joke. I stood there. Still. Holding the same glass. feeling the weight of 80 silent judgments pressing in from every side. And for a moment, I almost believed her, that maybe, this was it. This was where I ended, and she began. But then something shifted, not in the room. In me, a small thought, quiet, steady, the kind my grandmother used to leave behind in conversations. Discipline is kindness. I breathed in slowly, held it, then let it go. Because I knew something else too, something Brooke didn't. Something no one in that room understood. Not yet. This moment. This humiliation. This silence. It wasn't the end of the story. It was the beginning of something they couldn't control. And just as that thought settled, I heard it. A sound from behind. Not music, not voices, something heavier, the deep, sharp echo of doors opening. The sound cut through everything, not loud, not explosive, but heavy, deliberate. The kind of sound that doesn't belong in a room like this. The double doors at the back of the ballroom opened. Not slowly, not politely, firm, controlled, enough to make people turn, and they did one by one. Heads shifted, conversations paused, glasses lowered. Even the violinist in the corner hesitated for half a second. Because something had changed. You could feel it. That subtle shift in the air. When attention moves from celebration to something unknown, I turned with them, not fast, not surprised, just aware. Because part of me had been waiting. Not for this exactly, but for something, anything, that broke the pattern of what had just happened. At first, no one understood what they were looking at. A man stepped inside, then another, then 3 more. Not dressed like guests, not staff, not out of place, but not part of the room either. Dark uniforms, sharp lines, metals catching the chandelier light. And then, him. He stepped through last, slower, calmer. Not trying to take attention, but taking it anyway. You don't need to know rank to recognize presence. But I did. 4 stars. Each one catching the light just enough to make people notice. Even if they didn't understand what they were seeing, a 4-star general doesn't walk into a private engagement party by accident. And he definitely doesn't walk in like this. The room didn't react all at once, it never does. Confusion spreads first, then recognition, then silence. I watched it happen, table by table. Face by face, smiles fading, eyes narrowing, people adjusting in their seats, trying to understand why this moment suddenly didn't belong to them anymore. Brooke noticed too. Of course she did. Her posture shifted slightly. Not enough for most people to catch. But I did. That small tightening in her shoulders. That flicker of uncertainty behind her eyes. For the first time that night, she didn't look in control. The general didn't stop at the entrance. He didn't wait to be announced. Didn't look for permission, he just walked. Straight forward, measured steps. Each one echoing softly against the marble floor. Not rushed, not slow. Certain, the kind of movement that comes from years of being followed, without needing to ask. The men behind him stayed near the doors. Not blocking. Not interfering. Just present, like a line had been drawn without anyone saying it. I felt it before anything else. That quiet recognition in my chest. Not fear. Not confusion. Something closer to instinct. Because when you wear the uniform long enough, you learn to read it. Even from across a room. He wasn't here for the party. He wasn't here for Brooke. He wasn't even here for the room. He was here, with purpose. And somehow, I knew that purpose had something to do with me. The general's eyes moved once across the space, quick, sharp, assessing. And then, they stopped, on me. Not a glance, not a question, recognition, clear, immediate, like he already knew exactly who I was. The distance between us closed slowly, step by step. And the closer he got, the quieter the room became, until even the background noise, the soft clinking of glasses, the shifting of chairs, faded into nothing. 80 people. Silent. Watching. Trying to make sense of something they hadn't planned for. I didn't move. Didn't step forward. Didn't step back. I stood exactly where I was. Because that's what you do. You hold your ground. No matter where you are. Even here, even now. The general stopped a few feet in front of me, close enough that I could see the lines on his face. The years behind his eyes. This wasn't a man who entered rooms lightly, and this wasn't a moment he had stumbled into. He straightened slightly. Not dramatically. Just enough. Then, he raised his hand and snapped a salute, clean, sharp, precise, the kind of salute that isn't just protocol, it's respect. The sound of it, that small, controlled movement, echoed louder than anything Brooke had said all night, and suddenly, everything she had built in that room, every laugh, every look, every judgment, felt smaller, weaker, like it had been balanced on something that wasn't stable to begin with. I returned automatically, instinctively, because some things don't need thought, they just happen. Lieutenant, he said. His voice was calm, but it carried. Every person in that room heard it, and more importantly, felt it, not loud, not aggressive, just certain. The kind of voice people listen to, even when they don't know why. He didn't look at Brooke. Didn't acknowledge the room, didn't explain himself, because he didn't need to. He reached into the inside pocket of his coat, slow, deliberate, and pulled something out, a black leather folder, simple, unmarked, but it didn't belong here, not in a room built on appearances. He held it for a second, then stepped forward, and placed it on the table beside me. The sound it made was soft, but final. Like something had just been set in motion, that couldn't be taken back. The room leaned in, not physically, but emotionally. Every person there, waiting, watching, trying to understand what this meant, and why it was happening here. The general looked at me again, steady, focused, like everything else in the room had disappeared. And for a second, it had, because now, this wasn't Brooke's stage anymore. It wasn't her moment, it wasn't her story. Not anymore. The balance had shifted, and everyone could feel it, even if they didn't understand it yet. The general opened his mouth, about to speak, and the entire room held its breath. The silence didn't break, it stretched. Heavy, controlled, uncomfortable. 80 people in that room and no one moved. No glasses clinked. Nothing, because everyone was waiting. Not for the party, not for Brooke, for him. The general stood in front of me like the rest of the room didn't exist. And in that moment, it didn't. Lieutenant. His voice came again. Steady. Measured. Not loud. But it carried through the entire ballroom like it belonged there more than anything else. I straightened slightly. Not out of fear. Out of instinct. Yes, sir. The words left my mouth before I even thought about them. Because some habits don't fade, they stay with you. No matter where you are. Even here. Even now. He studied me for a second. Not casually, not politely. Carefully. Like he was confirming something. Then he gave a small nod. Barely noticeable, but intentional. I've been trying to find you. The words landed softly. But the effect was immediate. A ripple moved through the room. Confusion first, then curiosity, then something sharper. Because now, this wasn't just strange. It was personal. I felt it too. That shift. Because this wasn't protocol, this wasn't random. A 4-star general doesn't walk into a private party, looking for someone like me. Before I could respond, Brooke stepped forward, fast, not subtle anymore. Excuse me, she said. Her voice cut through the air, tight, controlled, but strained. For the first time that night, she wasn't smiling. I think there's been some kind of mistake, she continued. Her eyes moved between me and the general, then back again. This is a private event. There it was. The first attempt, control, reclaim the moment. The general didn't even look at her. Not a glance. Not a pause, nothing. He kept his focus on me, like she hadn't spoken at all. And that was the real shift. You could feel it. Not loud, not obvious, but powerful. Brooke wasn't being challenged. She was being ignored, and somehow, that was worse. Her jaw tightened. Just slightly. Enough for me to see. But the room, they saw it too, because now, this wasn't her stage anymore. And everyone knew it. Sir, I said carefully. Because even I didn't fully understand what was happening. The general reached for the black leather folder. The one he had placed on the table. His hand rested on it for a second. Like it mattered. Like what was inside carried weight. Then he looked at me again. Steady, focused. Your grandmother, he said. The words were simple. But they hit harder than anything Brooke had said all night. Something in my chest tightened. Not pain. Not exactly. Recognition. She asked me to make sure this reached you personally. The room leaned in. Not physically, but emotionally. Every person there, listening, trying to understand, trying to connect something they didn't yet see. Brooke stepped forward again, faster this time. Too quick. Too sharp. This doesn't make any sense. Now the smile was gone. Completely. What is this? She demanded. The general didn't raise his voice, didn't change his posture, but something in the air shifted anyway. Authority doesn't need volume. This doesn't concern you, he said, calm, flat, final. The words landed like a line drawn in stone. And for the first time that night, Brooke didn't have an answer, not immediately. Her mouth opened slightly, then closed. Because she wasn't used to that. She wasn't used to not being in control. The room noticed. Of course they did. People always notice when power changes hands, even if they don't understand why. I could feel eyes on me. From every direction. Not judgment this time. Something else, attention. Real attention, and it felt different. He lifted the folder slightly, not opening it. Just enough for me to see it clearly. This has been held for years, he said. Under very specific instructions, my mind started moving, fast. Trying to catch up, trying to understand. My grandmother, I said quietly, because none of this made sense. Not yet, not here, not like this. The general gave a small nod. She knew this moment would come. That stopped everything, even the air felt still. Because now, this wasn't random anymore. This was planned. Deliberate, something set in motion long before tonight. Brooke shook her head, a short, sharp movement. No, she said again, more quietly now. More uncertain. This is ridiculous. But her voice didn't carry the same confidence. Because now, she wasn't talking to control the room. She was trying to understand it, and failing. My mother shifted slightly in the background. I saw it. That small movement, that hesitation. She wasn't laughing anymore. She wasn't relaxed. She was watching. Carefully. Like she had just realized. Something important was happening, and she didn't know what it was. The general stepped half a step closer, closing the space between us. Not aggressively, just enough, he said. His voice dropped slightly lower, more personal. No. One word. But it carried weight. Not a suggestion. Not a request. A directive. I looked down at the folder. Black leather. Simple. But suddenly, it felt heavier than anything in that room. Because whatever was inside had already changed everything. I could feel it. Before even opening it. The room was still watching, still waiting. Not for Brooke anymore. Not for the party. For me, and for the first time that night, I wasn't standing at the edge anymore. I was at the center. I reached for the folder. Slowly, deliberately, my fingers brushing against the surface, and in that moment, I knew one thing for certain. Whatever came next. There was no going back. My fingers stayed on the folder for a second longer than they needed to. Not because I was hesitating. Because I could feel it, that quiet weight, not of the leather, but of whatever had been waiting inside it. For years. Maybe longer. The room didn't move. Didn't breathe. 80 people, watching one simple moment like it mattered more than anything else happening that night. And somehow, it did. I opened it. Slow, careful. The sound of the leather shifting felt louder than it should have. Inside, documents. Neatly organized, precise, not rushed, not random, deliberate. The kind of order that comes from someone who plans things to last. My name, at the top, full, formal, not handwritten, printed. Official. My chest tightened slightly, because this wasn't personal in the way I expected. This was structured, legal, real. What is this? Brooke's voice cut in again, not loud. But sharper now. Less control, more edge. This is getting ridiculous. I didn't answer. I didn't look at her, because for the first time that night, she wasn't the center of anything. I read. The words didn't rush. They settled, line by line. Designation of successor authority. I blinked once. Read it carefully. My name didn't change. It stayed there, clear, unmistakable. A second page, then a third. References, dates. Geneva. That word stood out immediately. Out of place, out of context, but important. I felt it before I understood it. Behind me. Someone shifted in their chair, a soft sound. But it broke the stillness just enough to remind everyone. This wasn't normal. Lieutenant. The general's voice came again, lower this time, closer. Raid the highlighted section. I found it. Marked cleanly, no guesswork. No confusion. Just one part. Meant to be seen first, I focused, and then, I understood something, not everything, but enough. My grandmother hadn't left nothing behind. She had built something, quietly, carefully, without telling anyone. My grip tightened slightly on the paper. From realization. "She set this up," I said, not to the room, not to Brooke, to him. The general nodded once. Yes, simple. Certain. For over 2 decades, that hit harder than anything else so far. 2 decades. That wasn't sudden, that wasn't confusion, that was intention, long-term. Disciplined, exactly like her. Behind me, a whisper started, small, controlled, but spreading because now, people were trying to understand, trying to place themselves inside something they hadn't expected. Brooke stepped closer again. Not as confident this time. Her voice dropped, lower, tighter. "What does that even mean?" she said. Her eyes moved between me and the papers, then back again. "What is this about money?" There it was. Of course she did. That's how she saw the world. Numbers, value, comparison. The general didn't look at her. Not once. "Continue reading, Lieutenant," he said. I did another section. More detail, more structure, not emotional, not vague, clear, defined, purpose-driven. My grandmother hadn't just saved money. She had directed it, controlled it, protected it, for something specific, something bigger than herself, and suddenly, everything about her made sense. The small house, the same coat for years, the quiet life. It wasn't lack, it was choice. My chest tightened again. Different this time, heavier, because now I understood what she had given up, and why. "She didn't tell anyone," I said quietly. The general's expression didn't change. She wasn't building something for recognition. A pause. She was building something that would last. The room felt smaller now. Not physically, emotionally. Because whatever this was, it didn't belong to the world Brooke had created. It belonged to something deeper, stronger, real. "What does it say?" someone asked from the back. Not Brooke, not my mother. A guest, curious. Unable to stay silent anymore, I didn't answer. Because I wasn't ready, because I was still processing it myself. Another page. Another section. My name appeared again, more clearly this time. Not just mentioned, assigned. Responsibility, control, authority. I felt it settle in. Not like a reward. Like a weight. A responsibility I hadn't asked for, but somehow already understood. Brooke shook her head again. More force this time. "No," she said. "That doesn't make any sense." Her voice cracked slightly. Just enough. "She didn't have anything," she added. "She lived like..." She stopped herself. Too late. Because now, everyone in the room was listening differently. Not to her, to the contrast. To the gap between what they thought and what was unfolding right in front of them. She lived exactly how she chose to, the general said. Still calm, still controlled, and somehow, that line hit harder than anything else. Because it wasn't defensive, it was final. I looked down at the papers again. At the structure, the detail, the years behind it, and for the first time that night, I wasn't thinking about Brooke, or the room, or the humiliation. I was thinking about my grandmother, sitting in that small house, writing things no one would see, building something no one would understand. Until now, my fingers moved to the next page, slow, careful, because I could feel it. This was where it changed, not just for me, for everyone. The general stepped slightly to the side, giving me space, but not leaving, not disengaging, just allowing the moment to happen. The room leaned in again, silent, waiting. I looked at the page, read the first line, and everything inside me shifted. I didn't speak, not yet. Because the words weren't ready to leave. Not like this. Not in front of 80 people who had just watched me be reduced to nothing. But they would, soon, because now, the truth wasn't just coming, it was already here, and there was no stopping it. I didn't rush, I didn't look up, not yet, because the moment I said it, there would be no taking it back. The room was still. Not quiet in the way it had been before, but waiting, heavy. Focused, every person there watching me now, not as background, not as contrast, but as the center of something they didn't understand. I read the line again, slower, making sure I hadn't misunderstood it. Making sure it was real. Because it didn't feel real. Not in this room, not after what had just happened. My fingers tightened slightly around the paper. Then, I looked up. Not at Brooke, not at my mother, at the room, because they all needed to hear it. The trust, I said. My voice was steady, calm, but it carried. Not loud, just collective. The words landed soft but heavy. A ripple moved through the room again. Confusion. Curiosity. Then, tension. What trust? Someone asked. Not quietly this time. Out loud, because no one could pretend anymore. I took a breath, held it for a second, then let it go. My grandmother created a trust, I continued, over 20 years ago. Now the whispers started. Not subtle, not controlled, real. Because this wasn't speculation anymore, this was information. She funded it quietly, I said. Built it over time. I paused, not for effect. Because I needed to. Because saying the next part changed everything. I looked down at the page one more time, then back up, and said it. The current value. A beat is over $12 million. Silence. Complete, not a single sound, not a breath, nothing. It didn't explode. It didn't react, it froze. Like the entire room had just stopped processing at the same time, because numbers like that don't fit easily into reality. Especially not into the reality they had just built about me. About everything. Brooke laughed. Short. Too fast. That's not funny, she said, but her voice didn't sound sure. Not anymore. That's not. She stopped. Because no one was laughing. No one was agreeing. No one was backing her up. For the first time that night, she was alone in the reaction. That's not possible, she said again. Quieter now. More to herself than anyone else. My mother didn't speak, didn't move. She just stood there, staring at the papers in my hand. Like they might explain something she couldn't. She didn't have that kind of money, Brooke continued. She lived in that house. The general's voice cut in, calm, controlled. But final. The room shifted again. Because now, this wasn't coming from me. It was coming from authority. From someone who didn't need to prove anything. Your grandmother's work didn't end when her service did, he continued. She developed a surgical protocol adopted in the late 80s. A few confused looks, some people trying to follow, some already lost. The royalties from that work, he said, were directed into a private trust. Now it started to make sense. Not fully, but enough. Enough for the room to begin connecting the pieces. She didn't spend it, I said quietly. More to myself than anyone else. She redirected it. The general gave a small nod, yes, one word. But it confirmed everything. Brooke shook her head again, harder this time. No, she said. Her voice cracked. Clear now, visible. You're telling me. She pointed at me. At the papers. At the entire moment she couldn't control anymore. She had that kind of money and just what? Hid it. She didn't hide it, I said. I finally looked at her. Direct, steady. She protected it. That landed not just on her, on everyone, because now, this wasn't about money. It was about purpose. About choice. About something none of them had considered. For what? Brooke asked. Her voice lower now, less aggressive. More desperate. Because she needed an answer she could fight. I didn't give it, not fully, not yet. Because even now, the truth was still unfolding. The general stepped slightly forward again, taking control of the moment without raising his voice. The trust was created with a single directive, he said. Support. A pause. Veterans. The word hung in the air. Different from everything else that had been said that night. Heavier. Real. Not performative, not decorative. Real. She funded medical care, he continued. Rehabilitation, housing, education. Now people weren't just confused, they were quiet for a different reason. Because this didn't match the story they had just witnessed. The poor grandmother. The small house. The simple life, it didn't fit. She helped over 200 individuals, he added. No applause, no recognition, no audience. Until now, I felt something shift inside me. Not anger, not satisfaction, something deeper, understanding. Because suddenly everything about her made sense. Why she never spent more. Why she never explained. Why she always said the same thing. Discipline is kindness. Brooke took a step back, just one. but enough. Like the ground under her had changed. That money, she said slowly, oh, belongs to the family. There it was. Even now. Even after everything. That was where shook my head, slow, controlled. No, I said. And this time, my voice didn't hesitate. It doesn't. The room felt it. That shift. Final clique. Because wasn't confusion anymore. This was truth defined, unavoidable. My mother finally moved. Just slightly. Her lips parted, like she was about to say something. But nothing came out, because even she didn't know what to say. The general looked at me one more time, not questioning, not guiding, just confirming. You've been named successor, he said. Simple, direct. And it's time you take responsibility. That was it. That was the line that changed everything. Not the money. Not the explanation. That, because now, this wasn't just something I had learned, it was something I had been given, and the room felt it. The full shift. The complete reversal. From pocket change to something none of them could measure. No one laughed now. No one whispered. No one looked away. Because the story they thought they were watching was gone. Replaced by something real, something they hadn't expected, and something they couldn't ignore. For a moment, no one moved. Not because they didn't want to, because they didn't know how. The room had changed. Completely. Same chandeliers, same music, same people, but everything felt different. Like the version of reality they had been standing on had quietly disappeared beneath them. I could see it, table by table, face by face, people who had been smiling minutes ago, now sitting still, processing, recalculating, because the story they thought they were part of was gone, and something else had taken its place, something they hadn't expected, something they didn't control. A man near the front cleared his throat, soft, uncomfortable, not to speak, just to break the silence. It didn't work, because no one followed, no one laughed, no one filled the space. They were all watching, still watching me. Not the same way as before. Before, they had looked at me like background, like contrast, like something to measure against. Now, they were looking at me like they had missed something. Something important. Something real. Brooke stood in the center. Exactly where she had been when this started, but she didn't look the same. Her posture had changed, subtly. But enough. Her shoulders weren't as relaxed. Her chin wasn't as high. Her grip on the champagne glass had tightened just enough to notice. This, she started, then stopped. Because for the first time, she didn't have control over how the room would respond. This doesn't change anything, she said finally. But even she didn't believe it. You could hear it in her voice. The uncertainty, the break. It changes everything. The words didn't come from me. They came from somewhere behind her. A woman near the middle tables. Mid-40s, calm, clear, not emotional, just certain, and that was the moment. The real moment. Not the reveal. Not the money that. Because it didn't come from authority. It came from the room. From someone who had been watching, judging, and had just changed her mind. Brooke turned toward her. Fast, sharp. What? She snapped. The woman didn't flinch. You made her a joke, she said, simple. Direct. You did it in front of everyone. A shift. Another one. Small, but spreading. Because now, people weren't just watching. They were choosing. And some of them weren't choosing Brooke anymore. That's not what happened, Brooke said quickly. Too quickly defensive. It's exactly what happened. Another voice, this time from a man near the back, older, measured. You didn't just say it, he added. You wanted people to hear it. Now the room wasn't silent anymore. It was moving. Not loudly, not aggressively, but steadily. Like something had been unlocked, and it couldn't be closed again. My mother stepped forward, finally. Everyone just needs to calm down, she said, her voice controlled, polished, trying to take back the room the way she always did. No. Someone interrupted, not loud, but firm. There hasn't. And just like that, even she lost it. Not control. Authority. Because no one was listening the same way anymore. Not to her. Not to Brooke. The weight had shifted, completely. I didn't say anything. I didn't need to. Because this wasn't my fight anymore. This was the room correcting itself, and that kind of correction is always stronger. Brooke laughed again, but this time, it didn't land. It didn't spread. It just stopped. "You're all acting like this changes something," she said, her voice sharper now, more desperate. It was a joke. No one responded. Not immediately. Because now, they were thinking. And thinking takes longer than reacting. "That wasn't a joke," the same woman said. "That was who you are." Silence again. But not the same kind. Not heavy. Not waiting. Because once something is said that clearly, there's no going back. Brooke looked around. Searching. For support. For agreement. For anything. But it wasn't there. Not anymore. People avoided her eyes. Some looked down. Some looked at me. But none of them looked at her the way they had before. And that was worse than anything. Because admiration can disappear. But once respect is gone, it doesn't come back easily. My mother exhaled slowly. That small, controlled breath she used when she was trying to think ahead. Trying to recover. "We're not doing this here," she said. But even that felt weak. Because didn't belong to her anymore. Not the way it had. The general hadn't moved. He didn't need to. He wasn't part of the reaction. He had already done his part. Delivered the truth. And now, the truth was doing the rest. I set the papers down gently. Not for effect. Because they didn't need it. Everything they represented was already in the room. Already understood. Already shifting everything. Brooke looked at me, finally. Not with confidence. Not with control. Something closer to realization. "You knew?" she asked, quiet, barely there. I held her gaze. "Steady." "No," I said. Because that mattered. Because this wasn't strategy. This wasn't revenge. This was truth, arriving exactly when it needed to. And for the first time that night, she didn't have anything to say back. No line, no comeback, no performance. Just silence. The same silence she had left me in minutes ago, only now, it belonged to her, and the room didn't rush to fill it. They let it sit, let it settle, let it mean something. I picked up the folder again, closed it, slow, controlled, because this moment was already complete. The shift had happened. The balance had changed, and everyone there knew it. Even if no one said it out loud. No one asked me to speak, but they were waiting. You could feel it. Not pressure, not expectation. Something quieter, something heavier. Like the room understood. This wasn't about the party anymore. It wasn't about Brooke. It wasn't even about the money. It was about her. My grandmother. I looked down at the folder again. At the papers. At the years she had spent building something none of us had ever seen. And for the first time since opening it. I wasn't trying to understand it. I was trying to understand her. She didn't just create a trust, I said. My voice steady, calm, but different now, softer, more personal. She built it over 22 years. The number sat there, real, specific, not exaggerated, not dramatic, just true. She funded it through royalties, I continued. A surgical method she helped develop after the war. A few people shifted, some surprised, some trying to process. Because this version of her didn't match the one they had assumed. She never told anyone, I said. She didn't want recognition. I paused. Because I remembered something, not from the papers. From her. The way she used to sit at the kitchen table. The way she spoke. Direct. Without needing anything in return. She used to say something, I added quietly. My eyes moved slightly. Not to Brooke, not to my mother. To the space between everything. Discipline is kindness. The words felt different now. Heavier, clearer. Kinness to your future self, silence. Not uncomfortable. Not forced, just present. Because now, they weren't just listening. They were 22 years. I said, that trust has helped over 200 people. A breath. Slow. Veterans. The word landed differently this time, not as information, as meaning. Medical care, I continued. Rehabilitation. Housing. Education. I didn't rush it, didn't stack it. Let each part exist on its own. Because each part mattered. People who had nothing left, I said. And no one else. I looked at the general for a second. Not for approval, for confirmation. He gave a small nod. Enough. Always enough. She didn't live small because she had to, I said. She lived small because she chose to. That shifted something deep, because now, it wasn't about what she lacked. It was about what she gave up, And why? I saw it on their faces. That moment when something inside someone changes. Not loudly, not dramatically, but permanently. Brooke didn't move, didn't interrupt, didn't laugh, she just stood there, listening. For the first time that night, really listening. She knew what that money could do, I said. She knew exactly where it was needed. My voice didn't rise, didn't break. Because it didn't need to. Truth doesn't need volume, it just needs space. And she trusted me with it. That was the line. Not the number, not the details. That. Because that's what changed everything. That's what made it real. Not just something that existed. Something that had been passed on, chosen. Deliberate. Brooke's fingers loosened slightly around her glass. Just enough for me to notice. Because now, this wasn't about winning anymore. This was about realizing what she had missed. What she had never even tried to see. She didn't leave it to the family, I said clear. Direct. No one can take it. That part mattered. Because I could feel it in the room. That quiet question. The assumption. That maybe this could still become something else. Something familiar. It couldn't. It belongs to what she built, I said, and it stays there. The finality of it settled. Not harsh. Not aggressive. Just done. My mother finally sat down. Slowly. Like something had shifted inside her that she couldn't hold up anymore. Her eyes weren't on me. They weren't on Brooke. They were somewhere else. Somewhere in the past. Trying to understand something that had never been explained. Brooke spoke again. Much softer. She could have helped us, she said. Not angry. Not sharp. Just confused. That was new. She did help people, I said. I didn't correct her. I didn't argue. Because I understood the question. Even if I didn't agree with it. She just didn't choose us. The words hung there, uncomfortable, honest, real, and for a moment, no one knew what to do with them. Because that's the kind of truth that doesn't resolve easily. It doesn't wrap up. It doesn't fix everything. It just exists. The general stepped back slightly, not leaving, just giving the moment room. Because this wasn't his part anymore. This belonged to us. To the space between what had been said and what couldn't be taken back, I closed the folder again, carefully. Not because it mattered now, but because it felt right. Because she would have done it that way. Simple, respectful, complete. The room didn't applaud, didn't react loudly. And that was better. Because this wasn't something to celebrate. It was something to understand, something to sit with. And maybe, something to learn from. I looked at Brooke one last time, not with anger, not with satisfaction, just clarity. Because this wasn't about proving her wrong. It was about showing what had always been true. Even if none of us had seen it. Until now. No one told them to leave, but people started stepping back. Not all at once, not dramatically, just slowly. Like the space around Brooke had become something they didn't want to stand inside anymore. A few guests moved toward the edges of the room. Some picked up their coats. Some avoided eye contact altogether. Not out of cruelty, out of discomfort, because the illusion had broken, and no one wanted to be too close to what was left behind. Brooke noticed. Of course she did. She always noticed shifts in attention. It was how she controlled rooms. But this wasn't attention she could use. This was something else. Something slipping away. Don't, she said suddenly. Her voice wasn't loud, but it cut through the movement. Don't walk away like this. A few people paused. Not because they had to, because they didn't know what to do. I didn't do anything wrong, she added. And there it was. The line she needed to believe. Not for them, for herself. You humiliated her, the same woman from earlier. Calm, steady, unmoved. Brooke turned toward her again. Faster this time. Frustrated. That's not what this was, she snapped. It was a joke. The word hung there again. Joke. But it didn't land the same way. Not anymore. Because now, everyone knew exactly what it had been. You wanted everyone to see her as less than you, the woman said. No emotion. Just truth. Brooke laughed again. But this time it broke. Halfway through, like something inside her didn't support it anymore. You don't know anything about my family, she said. Her voice rising now. Not shouting. But losing control. You don't know what we've been through. That shifted something, not in the room. In her. Because now, she wasn't performing, she was reacting. And there's a difference. A big one. My mother stood up slowly. For a second, I thought she might finally step in, not to control, to fix. But she didn't. She just stood there. Looking at Brooke. Not as the center of the night. Not as the daughter she had always defended. But as someone she was seeing clearly. She's right. The words came quietly. Almost too quietly. But they landed harder than anything else. Brooke froze. Completely. "What?" she said, not loud, not sharp, just right. My mother repeated, her voice steadier now. But different. Stripped of that polished edge. Stripped of control. "You shouldn't have said that." The room didn't move, didn't react. Because this was something else. This wasn't public pressure. This was internal, personal. And for Brooke, it hit deeper than anything the room could have done. "You're taking her side?" she asked, her voice thinner now, cracking at the edges. "It's not about sides," my mother said. And for the first time that night, she sounded honest. Not strategic. Not careful. Honest. "It's about what's right," that word. Right. It hung there. Heavy. Unavoidable. Brooke shook her head, slow at first, then faster. "No," she said. "No, that's not." She stopped. Because she didn't have anything to replace it with. No argument. No angle, no control. And that was the moment. The real breakdown. Not loud. Not dramatic, but clear. Because when someone loses control of the narrative, they lose everything they built on it. "I worked for this," she said, quieter now, more to herself. "I built this." Her eyes moved around the room. At the decorations, the people, the night. Like she was trying to hold on to it. Like it could still be what she wanted it to be. "You built a party," my mother said. Not harsh, not cruel. Just true. The difference mattered. More than anything, because one was real, the other was temporary. Brooke's hand loosened. The champagne glass slipped slightly, then fell, the sound of it hitting the floor, sharp, sudden, final. It shattered. Crystal fragments spreading across the marble. No one moved to clean it. No one rushed in. Because that moment, that sound, said everything. Brooke stared down at it. Not reacting. Just looking. Like she understood something now. Something she hadn't before. Something she couldn't undo. "I didn't mean it like that," she said, barely above a whisper. And maybe that part was true. But intent doesn't erase impact. And everyone in that room knew it. I didn't step forward, didn't say anything, because this wasn't mine to fix. This was hers. The consequence. The realization. The space between who she thought she was, and who she had shown herself to be. My mother sat back down slowly, not defeated, just changed. Like something inside her had shifted permanently, like she was finally seeing both of us, without filters, without comparison, without performance, and it had cost her something. The room began to move again, not loudly, not chaotically, but with direction. People leaving. Quietly, respectfully, not because they were asked, because they had seen enough, because they understood, and because there was nothing left to watch. The night was over, not officially, but completely. Brooke didn't stop them, didn't try to hold anyone there, because she knew there was nothing left to hold. I picked up the folder, held it for a second, then looked at her, one last time, not with anger, not with victory, just clarity, because this was never about winning, it was about truth, and truth had already done what it needed to do. I turned slightly, ready to leave, and for the first time that night, no one stopped me. The room felt smaller when I stepped out of it. Not because it had changed, but because I had. The cold air outside hit differently, clean, quiet, real, no music, no lights, no performance, just space. I walked down the stone steps slowly. Not rushing, not looking back, because there was nothing left behind me that needed my attention. The night had ended, not with a final word, not with a resolution, just with truth, and that was enough. The parking lot was almost empty. A few cars still there, engines starting, people leaving, moving on, like they always do. The world doesn't stop for moments like that. It just absorbs them. I stood beside my car for a second. The folder still in my hand. It felt heavier now. Not because of what it contained, but because of what it meant. Responsibility, not money, not power. Responsibility. I opened the door, sat inside, closed it. And for the first time since everything started, there was silence, real silence, no eyes, no expectations, no judgment, just me. I leaned back slightly, let out a slow breath. Felt it, not relief, not exactly, something deeper, something steadier, clarity. My phone buzzed. I looked a message. Unknown number. I opened it. She would be proud of you. No name, no explanation, I didn't need one. I knew who it was from. I typed a reply, then stopped, deleted it. Some things don't need answers. They just need to be understood. I started the engine. The sound filled the quiet space, grounded me, brought me back. I drove, not fast, not slow, just steady, streetlights passing one by one. The city fading behind me. And for the first time that night, I wasn't replaying what had happened. I wasn't thinking about Brooke, or my mother, or the room. I was thinking about her, my grandmother, the way she lived, the choices she made, the things she never explained, and the things I finally understood. The house was still the same when I got there. Small, simple, quiet, exactly how she left it. I unlocked the door, stepped inside, and the familiar smell? Coffee, wood, time, it hadn't changed, and somehow, that mattered more than anything else. I set the folder down on the kitchen table. The same table where she used to sit, morning after morning, no audience, no recognition, just discipline, just purpose. I pulled out a chair, sat down, and opened it again, not to read everything, just to look, to take it in. This wasn't about what she had built anymore. It was about why. I reached into the folder, and found the letter. The one I hadn't opened yet. The paper was simple, no logo, no formality, just her handwriting. I recognized it instantly, steady, clear, the same way she spoke. I unfolded it. And read, Nuri. The first line alone was enough to stop everything. Not lieutenant, not formal, just me. If you're reading this, it means the time came the way I expected. I paused, let that settle. Because she had known, not guessed, known. I didn't tell you about this because I didn't want you to carry it too early. My chest tightened. Not from surprise, from understanding. Because that was exactly something she would do. Wait, prepare, trust the right moment. You chose the harder path long before this ever became yours. I let out a slow breath. Because she had seen it. Even when I didn't think anyone had. That's why it belongs to you. Not because of blood. Not because of family. Because of choice. Because of discipline. Because of who I had become. My grip on the paper tightened slightly. But I kept reading. Don't let anyone turn this into something it's not. I thought about Brooke. About the room. About everything that had just happened. And I understood. This wasn't just money, it was direction. Purpose. Something that could be changed if I let it. It's not about what you keep. A pause. Even in her writing, there were pauses. It's about what you protect. That line stayed, deeper than the rest, because it didn't ask for anything. It defined everything. I finished the letter slowly, carefully, then folded it back the way it had been, placed it inside the folder again, and sat there for a while, not thinking, not analyzing, just being, because sometimes that's what clarity feels like, not loud, not overwhelming, just steady. The next morning came quietly, like it always did, no announcement, no change, just light through the window. I stood in the kitchen. Coffee brewing the way she used to make it, simple, strong. I took the first sip, and for a second, it felt like nothing had changed, but everything had. I picked up the folder, held it for a moment, then set it back down, not because I didn't care, because I understood. This wasn't something I needed to rush, it wasn't something I needed to prove, it was something I needed to carry. The right way. My phone buzzed again. This time a message from Brooke. I stared at it for a second, didn't open it immediately, not out of anger, out of space. Because not everything needs an instant response. Not everything needs to be fixed right away. I set the phone down, looked out the window. The world was moving normal, unchanged, and that was okay, because what mattered had already shifted. Inside, I took another sip of coffee, and for the first time, the words didn't feel like something I was repeating. They felt like something I understood. Discipline is kindness. A small breath. Kindness to your future self. I picked up my keys, stepped toward the door, and walked out, not as someone who had been proven right, but as someone who finally knew what she was meant to protect.